Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at the University of Missouri, Columbia. My name is Erica Aaron, and I am a faculty recruitment and engagement specialist in the Division of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. I am also the co-chair for this year's event. We are excited to have you join us this evening for what we hope will be an inspirational event for you and your loved ones watching.
And my name is Dr. Terrell Morton. I am an assistant professor of identity and justice in STEM education located in the College of Education here at Mizzou, and I am also one of the co-chairs for the 2021 committee. I would like to echo Erica's sentiment regarding our excitement for having you join us this evening, and it is important for us to continuously honor and celebrate the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and others who fought for civil rights in this country. As we begin our celebration, I am reminded of a recent tweet shared by Bernice King regarding MLK celebrations. The tweet reads, "As you honor my father today, please honor my mother as well. She was the architect of the King legacy and founder of the King Center, which she founded less than 3 months after Daddy died. Without Coretta Scott King, there would be no MLK Day." So let us honor Coretta Scott King, as well as others and other women who were leaders in the civil rights movement. And while each academic year, the University of Missouri and City of Columbia come together to celebrate the legacy of Dr. King, this year, during a time fraught with challenges, hardships, loss, and so much more, how we gather and celebrate Dr. King and others take on new meaning. This year, the 2021 MLK Committee selected the theme Infinite Hope, the power and possibilities of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision. Borrowing from his ideas shared by Dr. King, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. This year's theme embraces the challenges that we have faced in 2020 and continue to endure in 2021 with an outlook of hope, recognizing the empowerment that hopefulness provides as we continue to advocate for justice and work towards a truly inclusive society through equitable actions. Perhaps no statement rings more true than this one does today, right now. The current challenges we are navigating as a country and MU community, their implications on people's physical, social, emotional, and professional well-being, and the exacerbated effect it has on those of us who have been and continue to be marginalized because of systemic oppression and the implications of individual biases, require us as individuals and a community to think deeply about our individual and institutional values and actions and the extent to which they perpetuate oppression and harm or fight against it. We are in a time of great reflection and introspection, not only because of our individual and collective tragedies experienced, but also because of the grave atrocities we have all witnessed that continue to reveal the systemic oppression present within these United States and the world at large that differentially impact Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, among others. We are living in a moment where advocacy and activism continue to heighten, and given technological advances, the world and all of its good and bad is at our fingertips. Access to knowledge and the ability to see and empathize with the plights of others grants us the opportunity to leverage our individual and collective power and platforms to bring about transformative change. And so, though we are in a challenging time, we are also standing at the edge of possibility. We have heard the call and we have seen the need, and the critical, radical hope that guided Dr. King must be that same hope that we, as a university and community, carry forward through our sayings, but most importantly, our actions as we engage the present and face what is to come. And now I want to take a minute to review today's program, which can also be found on our website, mlk.missouri.edu. We will begin with a musical performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing, featuring Simone Sparks, a College of Arts and Science graduate, and Preston Wilson, a PhD candidate in music education. We will then invite the phenomenal Nikki Magruder to present the 2021 Community Award. After Nikki's presentation, we will share a video that features members of our campus and broader community discussing their perspectives of the impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision. The video will lead us into the great Robin Clay and Jennifer Brown, who will introduce our featured speaker, Ambassador Andrew Young. After the keynote, you will have the chance to have your questions answered by Andrew Young in a moderated Q&A session led by the outstanding Marshawn Love, an undergraduate student in the biological sciences, and Dr. Stephen Graves, an assistant professor in Black Studies. And lastly, it is only right that we conclude the celebration with music, honoring Dr. King in his birth month. The amazing Simone Sparks will return with an a cappella rendition of Stevie Wonder's Happy Birthday.
We want to take a moment to thank everyone who made this event possible. It took a lot of hours and hard work by an amazing group of people. Thank you to our 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee for your incredible work and stewardship. Our leader of the Division of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, Vice Chancellor Maurice Gibson, President Moon Choi and Provost Latha Ramshan for their support, Mizzou Visual Productions, who helped us set up and prepare for this virtual venue, and of course, our keynote speaker, Ambassador Andrew Young and his team. We will welcome Ambassador Young later in the program. We also want to take a moment to thank our very generous sponsors: Shelter Insurance, Central Bank, Veterans United Home Loans, Commerce Bank, and members of our own MU family, the Bridge and the College of Education, the College of Engineering, School of Medicine, Trulaske College of Business, the School of Law, and the Missouri School of Journalism. As you can see, our sponsors represent organizations around Columbia, as well as units from across the Mizzou campus. This event is only possible with their support, and we are so grateful to you. We also want to thank our contributors and all of you who are tuning in today. Thank you. You bring us inspiration, insight, and expertise. Your commitment to our progress means the world to us. That broad commitment to progress was in our hearts and minds as we planned this event and discussed how we could honor Dr. King. With obstacles such as social distancing and quarantining still a reality, we dug in and discussed how we could honor such a remarkable person. The excitement of planning grew as we realized that our obstacles were really opportunities. Our virtual platform would create an opportunity for more people to be a part of our celebration. Our reach online meant that we could bring Dr. King's message of infinite hope directly into your offices and your homes. We could celebrate his work in the way he would want it celebrated, and that is as a part of our daily lives. At Mizzou, we are continuing our work to make a positive impact on your daily life. We are finding new ways to turn obstacles into opportunity, providing hope for our future here at the university, and a heightened sense of belonging in the physical and virtual spaces where we reside each day. We have seized the opportunity to establish programs and centers that promote research and dialogue on matters such as social justice, race, citizenship, and more. We are in our 5th year of having a dedicated division at Mizzou to ensure the practices of inclusion and diversity are carried forth. Mizzou is requiring cultural competency lessons for the entire university community and has developed several teaching practices that promote inclusion in the classroom. But the work we are doing is rooted in a deep history. Our progress must respond to and reflect those contexts, and it must continue to evolve as new contexts emerge. Our university community has to lead this charge, yet we must collaborate more and do it together. So it's fitting that as a committee, we came together from across the university, from different disciplines with different experiences and different cultures to provide a context of infinite hope for you and to plan a celebration that we anticipate will inspire, engage, and fill you with a hope beyond measure, an infinite hope. Dr. King understood how important local action is to global change. Our collective mission here in Columbia continues in that spirit. How can we work together to enhance inclusive excellence for our campus and our broader communities? What is the role of education and scholarship in facilitating this progress? In all the steps we take at Mizzou, we continue to ask these questions and identify those solutions. There is no beginning or end to our work around inclusive excellence. It is ongoing, and it has a trajectory of promise. Just like hope, it is infinite. It was hope that made NAACP leader James Weldon Johnson write a poem that his brother later set to music in the late 1800s. The poem turned song was Lift Every Voice and Sing, often called the Black National Anthem. The song is a prayer of thanksgiving for faithfulness and freedom. I bring to you on our virtual stage, Ms. Simone Sparks and Mr. Preston Wilson.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, oh, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, oh God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
Wow. That was truly a moving performance. That moment of stillness after such a phenomenal performance was so serene and an excellent way to set the stage for this event. Thank you, Simone and Preston. I would like to bring to the stage Nikki Magruder to present our 2021 Community Award. Nikki Magruder is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for MU Healthcare. In this role, she advances the health system's efforts to encourage diversity in all of its forms. Nikki also has deep community ties, serving in multiple roles to further diversity and inclusion across Columbia. I am pleased to welcome Nikki Magruder.
Good evening. Since 2007, the University of Missouri Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Award recognizes and affirms those in the Columbia community who have made significant, tangible contributions in the areas of race relations, social justice, and human rights. Each year, the MU Celebrates Martin Luther King Jr. Planning Committee selects a Boone County resident or group to receive this award in recognition of extraordinary leadership and inspiration in furthering the goal of achieving greater cultural and ethnic diversity in the community. The heart of the award is to recognize individuals who give their time and service freely to those in need without question and often without recognition. This award seeks to honor those who promote Dr. King's legacy and attempt to make a difference in the lives of others through selfless service. Our 2021 nominees have been resilient in the midst of one of the most challenging times in our history. They have persevered in their quests to provide support, encouragement, and resources to the community that we all know and love. We received great nominations for this year's award, which is a challenge for our committee to have, a great challenge for our committee to have. Well, they would have loved to honor each and every one. They identified 3 finalists and as a whole named 1 winner. The 2021 MU Celebrates Martin Luther King Jr. finalists are Brittany Hughes of Missouri Faith Voices, Worley Street Roundtable, Miriam Marquez with Central Missouri Community Action. The recipients of a $500 gift toward the furthering of their organization's mission and vision, and the title of the 2021 recipient of the MU Celebrates Martin Luther King Jr. Award is Worley Street Roundtable. The Worley Street Roundtable was founded in the fall of 2014 as community partners threading students, parents, and organizations with the public school system to create viable ways to help children succeed academically, socially, and spiritually. The Worley Street Roundtable was birthed out of a passion and concern for the children that fell into a category that had been labeled the super subgroup. Professionals, educators, students, parents, and grandparents alike, all those with a strong passion for our community's youth, began meeting every Sunday afternoon to talk through what could be done to assist in turning things around. While they recognized that there was much to be done, they began to organize and create some initial goals that they felt they could celebrate early wins with. One was partnering with the Columbia Public School teachers and administrators to address the needs of the students and their families. 2, to create partnerships with church and community organizations already in place and doing great things to direct those in need of services to those organizations while filling in the gaps of services not already in place. And 3, mentorships for youth that match culturally competent and aware mentors with the youth who need them. Their nominator submitted, "This amazing organization supports our educational system by supporting our teachers. Worley Street Roundtable supports our teachers of color in our district by launching the Teachers of Color Support Network, providing community support and retaining our diverse teacher stock and growing our own teachers of color from our community. The Teachers of Hope and Promise annual award program allows middle school and high school students to nominate teachers in their buildings who they deem as the best educators in their schools. The winning nominations are then awarded a $500 check and certificate from the Worley Street Roundtable. Worley Street Roundtable continues to work diligently in supporting strategies for successfully addressing educational disparities in our community with monthly online town hall meetings. The organization is listening to the voices and ideas of many in our community by providing our school system with strategies to successfully assist our families in not just surviving, but accessing resources and supports to thrive and to rise above the disparities. Worley Street Roundtable is a champion and unsung hero in our community. Congratulations, Worley Street Roundtable.
Good evening, everyone. As the Assistant Director of Worley Street Roundtable, it is a true honor to accept the 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Award. We extend our sincerest gratitude and thanks to the nominator, Columbia Public Schools, the MLK Community Award Committee, and lastly, the community of Columbia. We don't take this acknowledgement lightly. Worley Street Roundtable is an organization composed of community partners, students, parents, and organizations within the Columbia community to create equitable ways to aid in the academic, social, and emotional students. A vision like threading together to thrive together accurately demonstrates the work we do and will continue to do in the community. We will thread together the pieces of the puzzle while thriving together. And we invite all of you to join in this journey with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daphne Bibbs. We appreciate you speaking with us this evening. We congratulate you again, Worley Street Roundtable, on your award. And I mean, what an important organization for our community. They truly pour into the lives of our future, our teachers, and our children, and they meet their educational needs. So again, congratulations. You are truly a force in our community, and we look forward to providing volunteers and just making sure that we are doing our part as a university to continue to support the great work that you do. So now we're excited to show you a visual compilation called What MLK Means to Me. This video features MU students, faculty, and staff, as well as members of our broader community. This video will speak to that very personal impact that Dr. King's work and mission has on the members that you will see speaking. So why don't we now take a look at what our MU faculty, staff, community, and students have to say about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
When you say, I want to make the world a better place, that is often a very lofty idea. But I think what Dr. King wanted to do was not just say, I want to make the world a better place, but actually to do that.
One word to describe MLK would be powerful.
Maybe like transcendent?
Love.
Humanity.
Would probably be everlasting.
Impactful is how I would describe Dr. King. It's amazing when you think about someone who grew up under Jim Crow and segregation in the South, with the political climate in our country as what it was in the 1960s, that he was able to mobilize and inspire a whole generation of people through peaceful protests to bring about changes in society.
I think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision for America is one that's going to be more honest and truthful. I think when we think about justice, when we think about equity, when we think about love, all those things tie into truth.
The interesting thing about his vision is that the world was in a worse place when he died, and it's in a better place now.
And, you know, for as far as we have come in the last 50 years, we're still fighting for and marching for and protesting for civil rights and voting rights and union rights and equality for all.
And black and white people will live together right here in Alabama.
I'm reminded of a man who had incredible courage to fight injustice and discrimination, and a man who was able to bring people from all walks of life to fight for the same cause.
In order to make people care, you have to be able to appeal to what they specifically have experienced and how those experiences shape their worldview. And I think that Martin Luther King was very, very good at kind of speaking to all of these different experiences.
He didn't care if you were a Democrat, a Republican, progressive, rich or poor. He wanted a better America for all of us. And I think it's important that we understand that what Dr. King worked for so tirelessly before his assassination was a better America, and a better America for those who didn't have a good America. Infinite Hope is such a powerful display of MLK's legacy.
Infinite Hope is grounded in a love, a kind of love that is unconditional. a kind of love that sees people as brothers and sisters, a kind of love for all of our siblings across gender and sexuality and class spectrums, a kind of love and an infinite hope that says when I step out into the world, I matter, no matter the skin or the mode of being I inhabit.
I am very pleased now to welcome the two individuals who have the distinct honor of introducing Ambassador Andrew Young. But before I share their names, I do want to remind the audience yet again to use the mlk.missouri.edu link to submit any questions that they may have for the Q&A format that will follow after Ambassador Young's keynote. Jennifer Brown is the Associate Director of K-12 Access Programming and Outreach Initiatives in the Division of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. And Robin Clay is the Manager of Diversity and Inclusion Initiatives in the School of Medicine and a doctoral student in the College of Education. And in a very Southern Black Baptist church tradition, I will now say, after the introduction provided by my esteemed colleagues, the next voice you will hear will be that of the illustrious Ambassador Andrew Young. Jennifer and Robin, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Morton. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Brown.
And I am Robin Clay. Together, we have the pleasure of introducing our distinguished speaker.
As we continue our celebration of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we embrace his legacy of infinite hope as one of connection with and to others. He planted a vision for justice that has been nurtured by many hands and tended through many lives over the years.
This evening, we are honored to spend time with someone who walked with, spoke to, and led alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ambassador Andrew Jackson Young Jr.
From his ordination as a minister to his work on behalf of civil and human rights, through his public service career as a member of Congress, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and Mayor of Atlanta, Andrew Young has lived his life in response to a call to service, a call that he heard as a young man in the South. Andrew Young was born in 1932 in New Orleans. Raised in a middle-class family, Young was forced to travel from his own neighborhood in order to attend segregated schools. He excelled as a student and entered college early, graduating from Howard University in 1951 at 19 years of age. After graduating from Hartford Theological Seminary in 1955, he became an ordained minister and took a job as a pastor in Thomasville, Georgia. It was during this time in South Georgia that he first became active in the civil rights movement. He organized voter registration drives in the African American community, enduring death threats along the way. We still see the significant role of community involvement in the pursuit of justice, leading to local, regional, and national change. As an institution of higher education, it is on us to build partnerships and coalitions to amplify the voices and concerns of our community and its members.
In 1957, Young moved with his wife, Jean Childs Young, to New York City to work with the Youth Division of the National Council of Churches. He returned to Georgia in 1961 to lead the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's, the SCLC's, citizenship schools. But working closely with Dr. King, he taught nonviolent organizing strategies, and within the LCLC, Young organized desegregation efforts throughout the South, including the May 1963 March in Birmingham, where participants were viciously attacked by police dogs. King often entrusted Young to oversee the SCLC when King spent time in jail after protests. Young was a key strategist and negotiator during the civil rights campaigns. These campaigns led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And as was mentioned earlier in the video, some of these rights we're still marching for and protesting for today. In 1970, Young left the SCLC to run for Congress. He lost his first race, but 2 years later, he became the first African-American representative from the Deep South since Reconstruction. He served on the Banking and Urban Affairs and Rules Committee, sponsoring legislation that established a U.S. Institute for Peace, the African Development Bank, and the Chattahoochee River National Park, while negotiating funds for MARTA, the Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, the highway system in Atlanta, and a new international airport for Atlanta.
Continuing to answer the call to service, crafting a history-making legacy, Andrew Young's service extended beyond the representation of his state and community to the world. In 1977, President Carter appointed Young to serve as the nation's first African-American ambassador to the United Nations. As ambassador, he negotiated an end to white minority rule in Namibia and Zimbabwe and brought President Carter's emphasis on human rights to international diplomacy efforts. Ambassador Young's global leadership carried the experience, skills, and vision of justice to which he dedicated himself even as a young man, just as we are being shaped as leaders within our campus, communities, and as citizens of the world. In 1981, Young was elected mayor of Atlanta, where, as he liked to say, the mayor once had him thrown in jail. He was re-elected with nearly 80% of the vote, and during his time in office, Atlanta hosted the Democratic National Convention. In response to a recession and a reduction in federal funds for cities, as mayor, he turned to international markets for investments in Atlanta, attracting 1,100 new businesses, $70 billion in investment, and 1 million new jobs to the region. He even developed public-private partnerships to leverage public dollars for the preservation of Zoo Atlanta. Young led the successful effort to bring the Centennial Olympic Games to Atlanta in 1996. As co-chair of the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games, he oversaw the largest Olympic Games in history in terms of number of participating countries, competing athletes, and the number of spectators. For this, he was awarded the Olympic Order, the highest award of the Olympic movement.
In 2000 and 2001, he served as president of the National Council of Churches. In 2003, he founded the Andrew Young Foundation to support and promote education, health, leadership, and human rights in the United States, Africa, and the Caribbean. Andrew Young Presents, a nationally syndicated series of podcasts and specials produced by Andrew Young, is seen in nearly 100 American markets and worldwide through the American Forces Network. Its first episode was drawn from the documentary Rwanda Rising, about Rwanda's progress since the genocide of 1994. Young narrated that film. And highlighting his importance of literacy, Young has shared his life's work in several books. These books include A Way Out of No Way, the spiritual memoirs of Andrew Young, An Easy Burden, the civil rights movement and the transformation of America, and Walk in My Shoes, conversations between a civil rights legend and his godson, the journey ahead.
In recognition of his exemplary contributions to society, Ambassador Young has received honorary degrees from more than 100 universities and colleges in the US and abroad. President Jimmy Carter awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and France awarded him their highest civilian honor as well. He has received the NAACP Spingarn Medal, an Emmy Lifetime Achievement Award, and his portrait became part of the permanent collection of the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery. He serves on several boards, including the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolent Social Change, Barrick Gold, the United Nations Foundation, the Atlanta Falcons, the Andrew Young School for Policy Studies at Georgia State University, and Morehouse College. Ambassador Young has earned worldwide recognition as a pioneer in and champion of civil and human rights. We are so grateful to welcome Ambassador Young to the University of Missouri to share his experience, wisdom, and reflections upon his life. Let us welcome Ambassador Andrew J. Young.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Robin and Jennifer. And I'm glad to be with you. This is a special day for me, and it's been a sad one because my good friend and neighbor, Henry Aaron, passed a couple of days ago, and we had a service honoring him at the Atlanta Braves this afternoon, and that's the reason I had to push back our little discussion until later on. But I want to tell you not so much about Martin Luther King or me or the movement. I want to give you some of the insights that you can't read in books. Some of the insights that I have gained just by being around and being aware. I want to start with, how did Black America get involved with nonviolence? And as I tell these stories, the significance of my telling them is not the stories themselves, but the spirit that links all of these stories to each other and then links us together through the stories and somehow changes the world. And indeed, the world has been changed. Martin Luther King was born in 1929 and would have been 92 on his birthday last week. I was born in 1932. Those were times of depression, times of real hunger, of real poverty. They're far worse than they are now, even in the midst of this pandemic. But totally unrelated to us and the South, there was a little boy that was about 12 years old who was very wealthy in Philadelphia. And his grandmother decided that she wanted to take him on a round the world trip for his 12th birthday. His name was Harris Wofford. On that trip, he happened to land in Bombay, India, just as Mahatma Gandhi was coming in to the town square. And as a 12-year-old boy, he got to meet Mahatma Gandhi. I don't know that he understood how important it was, but he was a very bright boy and a very privileged little boy. And he wanted to share that privilege. He ended up going, I don't know where he went to high school or college, but he started at law school at Harvard. And then he went to Howard University for his second year in law school and went back to Harvard to finish. But being influenced as a child by Gandhi and as a young student by people like Thurgood Marshall, he turned out to be a very special human being. And his family was Quakers of considerable wealth, evidently, because when he decided that the presidents of African American colleges should get to know more about Gandhi, he believed that nonviolence was a way of translating social change without violence, just as Gandhi had done it in India, that we could do it in the United States. And so he encouraged his grandmother and her friends of wealth to invite a dozen Black college presidents. I don't know the whole dozen, but I happened to go to 2 or 3 of the schools and whose presidents went to Gandhi's independence in 1947. Howard University's president, Mordecai Johnson, Dr. Benjamin Mays of Morehouse, Henry Stewart Nelson of Dillard University. I don't know who the president of Fisk was then, but Lincoln University. No, it was Lincoln and, well, I know there was one of the 2 Lincoln universities, maybe both of them were represented. But when they came back from that trip to India in 1947, Martin Luther King was a sophomore at Morehouse. And I was just entering my freshman year at Dillard University. But I started hearing about Mahatma Gandhi and nonviolence from these college presidents. It really didn't ring with me, except that if one little man with no money and no guns could go from South Africa back to India, and in South Africa, he was working with Nelson Mandela and the founding of the African National Congress. I think it was about 1912 or 13 that both the Indian National Congress, founded by Gandhi, and the African National Congress, founded by Albert Lutuli, in which Nelson Mandela started out as chairman of the Youth League, were all under the influence, the same spiritual influence that led them to believe that the world could be changed without people killing each other. Now, that was a revolutionary idea then, and it continues to be a revolutionary idea. But when you look at it and when you see its origins and how it came about, there's no question in my mind, and I hope you can see it this way also, is that there was some spiritual power moving across the earth that was influencing the shaping of history by touching young lives. And every time, in those days, chapel was compulsory. And in almost every chapel occasion, the presidents of the colleges at some point ended up talking about Mohandas K. Gandhi of India and the ability to change the world without violence. Well, Martin Luther King went to college young, as did I. We were probably smart, but we weren't very good students. So you don't have to be a straight A student to be a success in the world, but it helps. But I always like to tell students that Martin Luther King made a C in public speaking, and both in college and in seminary. And I think the grade I'm most proud of is that I made a D in a course in social disorganization. And I made it largely because my teacher had 2 PhD degrees, one from the Sorbonne in France and the other from University of Chicago. But she was trying to teach me about juvenile delinquency. And I said, but Dr. Krashovsky, what you're reading from these European intellectuals isn't what happened in my neighborhood. I said, half of my class in high school, well, it was maybe closer to a third. A third went to jail, a third went to the military, and a third went to college. I said, but it wasn't the smartest third that went to college. It just happened that we were the ones that were blessed with opportunity. In fact, some of the guys that went to jail were much smarter than any of us. It's just that they didn't have opportunity that we had. And those who went to the military essentially were trying to find, just desperately, trying to find some way to continue growing in a country that was in the midst of a depression and where all of us were relatively poor. I was declared middle class only because my mother and father had gone to a missionary college, straight college in New Orleans that became Dillard University. And my father went on to Howard University dental school. But we were living in a neighborhood where everybody was poor. But I was blessed that the neighborhood had an Irish grocery store on one corner, an Italian bar on another. The headquarters to the Nazi Party was on the third corner, and there was a Chevrolet dealership around the fourth corner. And I was right in the middle. And I almost had to be a UN negotiator to get back and forth to the drugstore or the grocery store. I mean, it was, you either learn to run, fight, or negotiate. And my father was a little guy, been a baseball player, played his way through dental school, playing baseball up in the Catskills. And he always said to me, son, you're not going to be big enough to beat up anybody. He was 5'4". He said, you'll be lucky to be 5'7" or 5'8". He said, so don't get mad. If you get mad in a fight, you lose the fight. And the Nazi Party was on the corner, Heil Hitler. And he said, look, this is white supremacy. Now, I heard this lesson in 1936 when he took me to see Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics. And after he won the 100-meter dash, Hitler refused to give him his gold medal and stormed out of the stadium mad because a black man had turned out to be the fastest man on earth. But my father said, but see, Jesse didn't get upset. He stayed calm, and he just went on and won 3 more gold medals and broke a couple other world records. And he said, your mind is the most powerful weapon you have. And if you get angry and upset, the blood rushes from your mind to your fist and your feet. He said, and your mind is much more powerful. You can think your way through problems a whole lot easier, and you'll feel a whole lot better if you can keep control of your temper and use your mind to work your way through problems. And he said, you'll probably be able to outrun a lot of people, but you won't feel good running from a fight. And he said, there'll be some people you'll be able to beat, because he was a dentist, and the Coliseum where all the boxers trained was within walking distance from our house. So he would get the boxers to, when he'd fix their teeth and sew up the jaw after they got beat up on their eyes, he'd make them take us, me and my brother, to the gym to teach us how to fight. So he said, if you know how to fight, you don't have to fight nearly as much. And if you have to fight, you don't have to fight but once, because anybody you fight will know they've been in a fight. Now, you might get beat, but it's best not to fight, and it's best to think. Don't get mad, get smart. And that was pretty close to what Gandhi was doing with England. And it was pretty close to what the African National Congress was doing in South Africa. But Harris Warford, who made it possible for these Black college presidents to go to India, also ended up being a friend of Jack Kennedy and working in his campaign when he was running for president. Well, when he was running for president, Dr. King was in a demonstration with the Atlanta University students. He had just come back to Atlanta from Montgomery, and they arrested the students and put them on a bus and took them back to the campus. But they put him in a police car and took him to a prison alone, and nobody knew where he was. That night, they put him in chains and put him in the back of a paddy wagon with just him alone and a German Shepherd. And they were driving for about 6 hours, and he was just 29 years old. And he was thinking that he was going to his death. And he probably would have had a nervous breakdown if it hadn't been for the German Shepherd, because he liked dogs. And every time there were no expressways, so that every time the paddy wagon went around a curve, he was in chains, and he'd roll over across to the dog, and the dog would growl. And he said he'd have to talk to calm down the dog. And in calming down the dog, he probably saved his own life. But all of these things were somewhat spiritual phenomena. And while he was in jail, the same little fella who met Gandhi at 12, who got his parents to take Black college presidents, was now working for Jack Kennedy, who was running for president of the United States. And he had also arranged for Martin Luther King and Coretta to visit India after the Montgomery bus boycott. So he was a good friend of the Kings, and just picked up the phone to call Coretta and find out what was going on with Martin. And she didn't know. Only thing she knew is that she hadn't heard from him in about 3 days, and nobody knew where he was. While Harris Warford was talking to Mrs. King, Jack Kennedy came in the room. And he said, "Here, Jack, say hello to Mrs. King." And Kennedy just, made small talk, and yet he was so moved by the story that Coretta told him that he decided that even though it might have cost him the presidency, he had to get some of his friends to try to help get this young man out of jail. Well, the fact that he made that call probably made him president. Because when Daddy King heard about it, that's Martin Luther King's father, he said, "No, I didn't know about this Catholic boy." He said, "And I've been a Republican all my life, but anybody that'll stop in the middle of his campaign and call a black preacher's wife to check on her husband, we never had anybody with that kind of sensitivity running for president." He said, "I think I got a suitcase full of votes, and I think I'm going to throw them all toward John Kennedy." Well, that's what made John Kennedy president. And he did follow up and get some of his South Georgia supporters to help get Martin Luther King out of jail. And all of this was sort of negotiated by somebody you probably had never heard of before. Harris Warford went on to become the deputy director of the Peace Corps. He was later elected as a senator from the state of Pennsylvania. He was the president of Haverford College and went to India with me and Martin Luther King III a few years ago, and he only died just recently. But I tell you that story because nothing that any of us did was ever planned. And that you can take any movement that we were a part of, and we sort of got there by accident. But it was a spiritual accident. We weren't trying to get rich. You don't get famous going to Selma, Alabama, see, unless the Lord is sending you. Or Birmingham was the worst place in the world for Black people in 1963. And when Fred Shuttlesworth said, "You all got to come help me in Birmingham," if you'll excuse the expression, one of Dr. King's friends said, "Lord have mercy, you go to messing with folks in Birmingham, you just well put your head between your legs and kiss your behind goodbye." Some of us ain't gonna come out of there alive. Well, fortunately, we all came out alive, but after the Voting Rights Bill was passed, after the March on Washington, 4 little girls in 16th Street Baptist Church got a bomb thrown into their Sunday school and gave their lives. So everything that happened to Martin Luther King and everything that's happened in my life with Martin Luther King, it's totally unreasonable that Jimmy Carter from Plains, Georgia, and Plains, Georgia is Sumter County, Georgia, down in South Georgia. It's an 80% Black county. And this little white boy grew up down there and was just smart. Went to the Naval Academy, became a nuclear physicist, but he had been educated by young Black country folk. And he knew how to relate to all kinds of people. And somehow he became governor of Georgia and president, and came to me and said, "I need you to be the United Nations ambassador because we have to change human rights all over the world." Well, that's what Dr. King was trying to do when he was killed. In fact, the 1 year to the date, he had a speech before he was killed. He had a speech at Riverside Church where he talked about not being able to segregate the violence in his domestic life and the violence in his international life. And that America had to be consistent in its values. And the bombs that you drop on Vietnam will explode at home in inflation and unemployment and racial crisis that you and I have lived through. But you can read a lot about the, what happened according to the historians. But they really didn't understand what was going on with us. And we didn't even understand what was going on with us. I don't think Dr. King knew, but he had a sense of the fact that since he was a little boy, he had been caught up in what I'll choose to call a divine reality. That he wasn't just another little black boy that was 5 feet 7 inches tall, and 160 pounds. That he was defined not by his color or his size or his wealth or even his brain power. He was being defined by his willingness to follow the spiritual aspects that made him the man that he was. And it wasn't that he wanted to be famous. He actually went to Montgomery to stay out of politics because he figured in Georgia they'd want him to get into politics, and he wanted to be a pastor, and he wanted to finish his PhD dissertation. And so he chose Montgomery because it was probably the most conservative racist town in America. And 2 weeks after he mailed in his dissertation, his doctoral dissertation to Boston University, Rosa Parks sat down in the front of the bus, and he was launched into the limelight. And at 26 years old, he was on the front page of Time magazine, front cover. So, but all of this goes back to a little boy whose grandmother took him to India, and he bumped into Gandhi. And I don't know what accidents will happen in your life, but when things happen like that, these are not accidents. You are part of a divine order that runs the world, that you are a part of. And it's hard to read about in books. It's hard to plan it on your own, though it never hurts to keep yourself involved in prayer and meditation about anything you're doing. And that when you get upset, when the danger's all around you, the best thing you can do is to be quiet. Because one of the people that Gandhi learned from was Jesus of Nazareth. And he learned about Jesus of Nazareth reading from the writings of a Russian, Leo Tolstoy. And there was a little bitty book. It's a tiny book, just about 100 pages. And I recommend it to you. It's called The Kingdom of God is Within by Leo Tolstoy. And that was one of the books that Gandhi read. It was one of the books that Martin read. That it was one of the spiritual books, the writings of Deepak Chopra on 7 spiritual roads to success. That the key to Martin Luther King that I want to leave with you is that this was not political action. We had no political power. This was not economic action. We had no money. See, this was not military power. We had no guns. See, and yet we prevailed against the power of the most powerful nations in the world. And we prevailed against some of the most difficult problems that face the world. Now, we didn't get very far. Oh, we got a long ways, I guess, when you consider that. But when Dr. King started the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1957, he chose as his motto to redeem the soul of America. from the triple evils of racism, war, and poverty. Now, much of what he did in his lifetime was to deal with racism and war. But it was the beginning of the Poor People's Campaign that probably got him killed, that he was raising the same questions when he said, a nation cannot survive without its poor. I like the term they're using now, and I don't know where it came from, but we realize that workers, essential workers, are absolutely necessary for a successful society. And I went to Congress in 1972 when President Biden went to the Senate in 72, and I've known him almost that long, and it seems to me that he comes out of something of the same mode. He wasn't supposed to be, well, he wasn't a glamour boy, he wasn't a profound orator, but he's always been a great spirit and just a regular Joe. And I think that the timing is right for all of these forces to come together. And you are an important part of those forces. And I think that Dr. King's spirit, he's been gone from us for 53 years. Nothing has happened in my life when I didn't feel some guidance or information or some, I don't know, even this speech. I came from Hank Aaron's funeral and I didn't know what I was going to talk about, and something hit me about the discussion you were having and the number of hours and days that you're spending thinking about this. And I said, what can I say to the University of Missouri that maybe nobody else could say? And then I remembered the one young man who sat on the steps and fasted. And I don't know his name, but you know what I'm talking about. And he brought that school to its knees without ever raising a fuss. He simply used the power of his spirit. And it's the only place in the world that one human spirit has beaten a football team by himself. And so you all have had a demonstration of the power of a single human spirit. And I've been fortunate enough to have met a spirit like that in Martin Luther King, a spirit like that in Mahatma Gandhi, in Olusegun Obasanjo, the president of Nigeria, the president of Tanzania. All of these were men with power beyond their wealth and their wisdom and their military or economic might. And the true leaders of this planet are leaders that are raised in the spirit. And I don't know whether you came to Missouri with that in mind, but when that brother sat down on that step, you were exposed to a kind of power that was not revealed on another campus anywhere in this country. And I'm trying to let you know that that's the same kind of power that dwelled in Martin Luther King, and that it dwells in you, and that whatever is required of this planet and of this nation as a leader of the planet, it can be the medical crisis of coronaviruses, it can be the climate crisis of global warming, it can be the economic crisis caused by both of them, or the crisis in race and creed and class that is threatening the entire planet. But I feel privileged that I'm talking to the leaders of the planet. And I don't believe Martin Luther King in college thought of himself as a leader. I couldn't even get a girlfriend. I barely made the track team and the swimming team, but I was too little to play football. And I almost, if I'd have made one more D, I'd have flunked out instead of graduating. So, and yet, once I found a connection spiritually with the maker of heaven and earth, my life has always been, it's always worked out. And I'm sure most of you grew up in some kind of church, or you had a grandmama who prayed, or this is not spiritual nonsense to you that I'm talking. And so take it and do what you will with it. But I guarantee you that the power of a Gandhi, of a Martin Luther King, of a Nelson Mandela is in you. So be careful, be courageous, and God bless you.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you really learned a lot and got a lot out of that experience and the courageous words that Ambassador Young has just shared with us. We are going to move into the Q&A portion of this event. With me and helping me moderate this wonderful discussion is Marshawn Love. Marshawn, how you doing?
I'm great. I just wanted to say, Mr. Ambassador Young, that was a great and meaningful speech, especially hitting on the parts about not being planned. When I was in grade school, they definitely taught stuff as a movement was a planned a planned thing. So I'm glad that you explained the fact that it was more like manifest destiny. So I was also gonna say when we look at the vision that you all move with, as well as the infinite hope and political policies that you all were fighting against in those times. Obviously, times have changed and we have different issues, but that same vision can definitely be used in today's fight.
Thank you.
Did you
have a question?
Wonderful. We're going to get right into the first round of questions. We've got questions coming from students, community members, faculty members. So we're going to take as many of us as we can to finish through. So to get started, I know that you began and started your talk talking about the importance of nonviolence and how it's kind of set the foundation for the movement. How would you characterize the perceptions, maybe personally or as it was going, with the kind of counter movement that is also taking place kind of at the same time with Stokely Carmichael and Huey Newton and the kind of other sect of the civil rights movement that is trying to fight its way for progress? So how did that dichotomy, or how is that perception of that branch of the civil rights movement, or how did you see it?
Well, I probably didn't relate to that because they were angry. And not only did they not succeed, they're not alive today, and I'm older than them. I mean, Stokely lost his cool in Mississippi and panicked after shouting Black Power. You can't, I mean, then he went to Africa angry at America. And, we other than Martin Luther King, who got shot, most of the SCLC people were a little older, We had wives and children. So we were a little more stable and conservative, but none of us had a temper. And we didn't kill ourselves, but a number of the more militant young people, and I'm saying this not critically, but compassionately, that they got mad and they start having ulcers and heart trouble in their 40s. See, I'm 88. C.T. Vivian, who just passed a month ago, was 95. Joe Lowry was 96. John Lewis caught cancer, but it was not until he was 80. And I think you have to see your life as the long haul. And there are no quick fixes. There are no quick fixes in yourself, and there are no quick fixes in your society. And so the one Black Panther that did stay cool is one of the most powerful members in the Congress right now, Bobby Rush. And there are others that were influenced by more militant voices, but they ended up as professors and scholars, and social interaction, social change, political change, global change. I mean, my daddy raised me, and I mean, if he told me once, he told me 1,000 times, don't get mad, get smart. If you lose your temper in a fight and get angry, you're going to lose your fight. Use your mind. You ain't big enough and you ain't fast enough and you got, to beat anybody. So, but you can outthink or think with anybody, because most of the people that you have a clash with are going to get upset. And don't let anybody get you upset. Now, I'll tell you where that's best rewarding me, with my wife and children. My wife gets mad with me because I won't get mad. She said, why is it you? I said, look, baby, you're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I love you.
Amen.
And
sometimes that's the best we can do.
But you don't win fights with your children either. Yeah. See, and I got grandchildren in their 30s, so they always telling me what I did wrong in the world, and I say, well, I don't argue. I said, I tell you, I did the best I could, and I had to leave something for you to do. So you go ahead, it's yours now. When you ask me for my advice, I'm going to tell you the best that I know in my 88 years. See, but if that's not good enough for you, it shouldn't be. Go ahead and do something, find a new way.
So, Ambassador Young, this student actually comes from a student's question. What are some of the specific and measurable actions public institutions should consider in an effort to engage the community as allies for diversity and inclusion, in light of fears that acknowledging the plight of some may tread on the rights of others?
Well, the thing that slowed me down was that some may tread on the rights of others. And I don't think that that's true. I think that, take South Africa, for instance. They felt that in order for them to stay strong as white people, they had to keep all the black people down. And when I went to see one of the meanest South Africans in the bunch as ambassador to the United Nations, everybody was scared to talk to him, but he was just like the white folks I grew up with in Louisiana. And so when I went to see him, it finally boiled down to the fact that the real question on his mind was, surely these black people are going to rise up one day and kill us all. How long do you think we have before a bloodbath? And I said, I don't think you have a bloodbath. I mean, you can avoid it. And one of the reasons that President Carter asked me to come to talk with you was that if you want to work on how to have a multiracial democracy, that he grew up in an area just like this that was 80% black, and we are making it work. We don't have all the problems solved. And I said, we'll be glad to help you. And I said, Gandhi, he said, how can you say they're not going to kill us? And I said, well, Gandhi went back to India and he freed India. And I don't think a single Englishman was killed. See, and I said, because we want to share the riches of the earth, but we can't let you act like they're all yours. And that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And as his children, we'll all function better if we're helping each other. And it's almost like the Lord's got a sense of humor. He said, you all mess with me and think that white is right and pick on my black folks. And here's a virus that comes over here, and it doesn't know anybody's color. And you all are going to have to figure out how to get together. And it's not just the doctors. In fact, more of the health depends on the nurses, but it depends on the sanitation workers who keep the streets clean. See, and it depends on the policemen, and it depends on everybody. And we might find ourselves more united after this pandemic than we've been in a long time.
Well, I will certainly hope so. We're going to get to our next question is from a member from the community, and they want to ask, when you think about all the rights won recently, such as voting rights, ability to work in upper level administration jobs, you spoke on this a little bit earlier about when you think about progress and how far we've come. What do you see the current status of Black and brown people here in 2021 as it relates to these things like equity and inclusion?
Well, I tell you what, turn on your television set. Now, when I used to look at television in college, I didn't see anybody but Amos and Andy on there. And every now and then, when Nat King Cole came on television from Alabama, they blew up the tower. Now every night, you got things that are written by Black people, that are acted by Black people, that just mass media has changed. You look at any college, and we don't have enough Black professors, but that's because not enough of us got a chance to get doctoral degrees. But it wasn't what we didn't have people smart enough. And wise schools would take some of the really brainy brothers and sisters out of the community So nobody in Dr. King was the only one in the whole movement that had a PhD degree. And I say this with respect. He was not the smartest. There were some crazy people that were much smarter than him. And there were some simple people that had more powerful spirits than him. And it was people like Rosa Parks. The bus boycott wasn't Martin Luther King's idea. That was Rosa Parks' idea. And this march from Selma to Montgomery was Amelia Boynton's idea. See, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party came from Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And that was it was so simple and it made so much sense.
Right.
That I got to vote myself out of this hell. And the power of our movement was that we responded to God's children. Fred Shuttlesworth had done everything he could in Birmingham before he came to get us. And he said, "Look, I can't make it without you all. And if we're going to stay nonviolent, you need to help us." But that was Fred Shuttlesworth's idea, not Martin Luther King's. Now, what we did was we put a disciplined action plan together, and it included, first of all, documenting the injustices accurately, then entering into negotiations with people who had the power to change things. If that didn't work, then we began demonstrations. But we never stopped the negotiations. We were negotiating all the while we were demonstrating. But we had put down on paper the things that we were trying to achieve before we ever started. Now, we could do that because it would take us 3 months to get a community organized. When George Floyd was killed and the whole world saw him, thanks to cell phones and all of the social media, the whole world knew it in a matter of minutes. And you had people in the streets, and fortunately, they were extremely disciplined, but you had some people who took advantage of this to try to, well, you always have to discipline your own demonstrations. And it's not just us. Now, all of those people that were out there acting the fool in front of the Capitol, I mean, that was just downright crazy. See, and they were encouraged to do that by people in public office. See, and it's going to take a long time to throw that out, but I know some of those people came from Atlanta, and they were friends of mine that had voted for me. And they're not all crazies, see, but we're just on different sides on some issues. And it's dangerous when you have people who, used to say, throw a rock and hide your hand, see, and try to blame it on somebody else. And that's what we had doing there. And I don't know whether the Congress is going to be able to punish anybody, but so far there are almost 200 people that they have identified and that they will be charging. What they'll charge them with, I'm not sure. But the whole time from 1961 to 68, nobody in SCLC stayed in jail more than 10 days. And that was Martin Luther King because he wanted to. And we didn't do things like run out into the expressway because that's a felony. And you get 5 years for that. And you have a nonviolent struggle is a long time process. There's nothing you can do except what the brother did. That the most powerful demonstrations are the quietest. And one brother expressing his soul power by sitting on the steps, staying hungry. And I don't even think he had a sign up. I don't know. But the word got out, and there was more spiritual power generated by that one young brother than there was in terms of accomplishing what he wanted to accomplish and what the university wanted to accomplish. He accomplished it because people focused not on what he was saying or not on any crazy actions. It was the power of his spirit that transformed the world around him. And I think that's still where the power is.
Yes, sir. So with the next question, what was the hardest moment in your life and how did you overcome the adversity?
I don't know. I mean, you know, the hardest moment in my life the title of my book on the civil rights movement is An Easy Burden. It came from the Bible verse, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And because I thought I was caught up in the spiritual power that I had learned through Gandhi and Jesus and Martin Luther King and John Lewis and James Bevel and Fred Bennett. And I mean, there were a bunch of crazy geniuses. And Dr. King used to say, I mean, he said, you have got to be clinically insane to think that a crazy bunch of young brothers like you can change this sick country. He said, nobody in their right mind would think of that. And he said, you may not live to see it, but you do. And he was always talking about himself, but he never talked about him dying. He said, you might not see it, but I tell you what, I think I can even pray you into heaven. And then he'd start praying, preaching your funeral, and he'd be preaching your funeral more like Richard Pryor or Chappelle or something. He'd be saying all of the trashy, dirty things he could say about you. And then they say, but please, Jesus, let him in. And he made us laugh at death and trust in the spiritual power that was available to us.
That's really important to get to our last question here. Your life really resembles what we discussed a lot in class about this transition from protest to politics, right? From the streets to elected office. So what would you say is the biggest learning point or sticking point or transition for young activists as they think about making that transition from the streets to elected office?
Well, for one, I didn't want to do it. I wasn't interested in politics, but the last conversation I had with Martin Luther King before he went to Memphis was with Harry Belafonte and John Conyers of Detroit and Dick Hatcher of Gary. And they were saying that we've got to figure out how to take the energy of this movement and move it into politics so that we can elect people of goodwill. And we don't have to get a march and get beat up or deal with fire hoses and dogs every time something's wrong. We need to elect people of goodwill of any gender, race, creed, or color that will represent the needs of the least of these God's children. And when I ran for Congress, nobody else wanted to run. And when I ran, I mean, I liked the Congress, but Jimmy Carter said he needed me to go to the UN. Well, that was a really great job, but I was happy in Congress. And then when I couldn't get along with the State Department all the time, and I had to leave the UN, I got back just as the white community in Atlanta, we'd had a black mayor for 8 years, and this white community decided that they didn't want another black mayor, that black mayors held back investment. And so people turned to me and said, you know, you got to run. And I ran and won, and we proved we got more investment in 8 years that I was mayor than in all of the mayors over the last 40, 50 years. So, because I came from the UN, and when I was in Congress, I was on the banking committee. So I knew things about the world that normally wouldn't happen in local politics. And then everything we did, we made sure that minorities and female-owned businesses, like when we raised $2.5 billion for the Olympics, and 41% of every contract went to a minority or female-owned business. And that has continued. Now, all the business the city does and the airport does, and our airport is the busiest in the world. It was before the virus, and it'll probably be coming back, but it's going to be a while. But we're bigger than the airport in China. I think we had 110 million passengers in 2019. And Beijing was the largest airport in China, and they only had 90 million passengers. We were 20 million passengers ahead of them. We were bigger than LaGuardia and Kennedy put together, or bigger than both of the airports in London. And if you go through there, you think that black folk are doing everything, but you know, they're there, and they own those businesses. And it has made our colleges grow. It's made our school system a little better, though our weakness is still our public school system. People kind of lost faith in public schools, and I think everything I learned more in public schools in Valina C. Jones School, which they said, where did you learn to be an ambassador? Valina C. Jones School. See, I had to negotiate or get my butt kicked almost every day. You know, or I had to get along with people who didn't like me or who were jealous of me because I had lunch money and they didn't. And but that's That's been my life, and I think I've been blessed to. My problems have been my blessings, because they've made me rise to a new level with each problem.
I like that. Wonderful. Thank you again for taking as many questions as you were able to take. And I thank you for everybody in the community, the students and faculty members who contributed questions for this wonderful Q&A. If you heard something that you really like, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody on the committee to keep this conversation, everything going after the event is over with. But we really want to thank Ambassador Andrew Young for taking questions and everyone who participated. And we're going to pass this back to Erica to take us home.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Graves. And thank you, Marshawn, for moderating a phenomenal question and answer session. We received some great questions from our audience. And so we want to thank you all for being so immersed in the discussion and so engaged. We also want to thank, of course, Ambassador Young for the powerful message and for the wisdom imparted to us this evening. We've gained so much information, and we appreciate this time to have an intimate moment with you and to have some of our questions answered. We do consider you definitely a legend, a living legend that we've been able to have right here with us. And we know now that we will make our problems our blessings. So thank you so much for that. Well, before we close our celebration, we have a song that is definitely fit for a king. We invite Simone Sparks back to our virtual stage to sing the Happy Birthday song written by the artist Stevie Wonder as part of an effort led by the late Coretta Scott King to make Dr. King's birthday a national holiday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. You know it doesn't make much sense. There ought to be a law against anyone who takes offense at a day in your celebration, 'cause we all know in our minds that there ought to be a time that we can set aside to show how much we love you. I just never understood how a man who died for good could not have a day that would be set aside for his recognition, because it should never be just because some cannot see. Oh, a dream as clear as he, that they should make it become an illusion. But we all know everything that he stood for, time will bring. For in peace our hearts will sing, thanks to Martin Luther King. So let us all begin. We know that love can win. Let it out, don't hold it in. Sing it as loud as you can. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday, happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
That was truly beautiful, truly beautiful. Thank you so much, Simone, for your gift of song. It indeed fills our spirits. And to those who joined us this evening, we thank you. Thank you for showing up and for allowing us to pour a little more hope into your lives. This has been an amazing evening full of wonderful lessons and spirit-filled sounds.
Erica, I could not agree more. Thank you to our wonderful committee for bringing this together in record time. Thank you to those who served on this program. And to you, Erica, I also say thank you for being a phenomenal co-captain of this ship. Without you and your leadership, this event would not have been as amazing as it was. And as we close, I encourage everyone listening to not let this event just be another box checked regarding how you engage and support the fight against injustice, but rather let it be a reminder for you to actively work against systemic injustice in your personal and professional lives, holding yourselves and others around you accountable for bringing about true change that will foster an inclusive society. Your efforts and work must bring about substantial enhancement and advancement for those considered to be the least of these.
Thank you, Dr. Morton. What an honor to work with you and the entire committee. And thank you all for joining us from your office, your home, and possibly even your car. Please make note of our sponsors and contributors one more time as we exit your screens. And we're going to leave you with more images and words from the civil rights movement, emphasizing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s impact and influence. Please have a great evening, and thank you for joining the 2021 Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at Mizzou.
The chains that were broken, your gift of love, our hearts are open through the valley of hate to the mountaintop. Thank you, Dr. King, we're moving on up. Martin Luther King, for you this song I've come to say. Martin, let freedom ring from the mountaintop to the shining sea. his people to live in harmony. Like Pharaoh from the fire, Martin Luther King, Egyptian Messiah. Oh, Egyptian Messiah. Martin Luther King, for you this song I've come to sing.